Two young bystanders jump into action, helping to rescue a driver from the wreckage of a fiery crash in Midtown last night. Good evening. A driver is lucky to be alive after surviving this.
And tonight we are hearing from the Good Samaritans who helped pull him to safety. CTV Sean Leithong is live with the details tonight. Sean.
Well, Natalie and Michelle, the driver of this vehicle isn't just lucky that these two men came to his aid when they did. They're also lucky that they knew exactly what to do in this situation.
When 20-year-old Jaden Brown and Cameron Whitten came across a fiery car crash, they sprung into action, potentially saving the life of a person inside.
That's what we're supposed to do. We're mandatory first responders, right? We have the training. Why wouldn't we help?
The two are both students at the Royal Military College. Around 10:30 last night, they heard the crash from Whitten's nearby home.
We hear the car speeding by and go, people are being stupid. The World Juniors had just finished.
Didn't sound like it was a normal bang that you hear every night, right?
A black Ford Mustang had lost control along Bayview, south of Moore Avenue, crashing into the parking lot of a Loblaws. The two men arrived to see a car in flames and a crowd forming. Their training kicked in.
Told everyone to move back. We weren't sure it was going to explode or not.
They broke all the windows in the car to let the smoke out and to help the driver who was still inside.
I checked that he was alive, but I couldn't extricate him because, he was pinned. So I tried my best to get him out, get him away from the car that could have exploded, and then we just dealt with the fire.
Give me the extent of the flames at the time.
About 2 foot
2
flame
feet on the
engine. Yeah, it didn't seem like it was spreading. It just seemed like it was shooting out.
Yeah.
But the whole front was just crumpled.
911 had already been called, and they say two people had brought fire extinguishers to the site. So Brown and Whitten used them to try and knock down the fire before any possible explosion.
Was the fire out when EMS arrived?
Yes.
So you effectively put out the fire?
We put out the fire and checked for vitals. EMS showed up. We gave them the triage report.
When first responders arrived, the roof of the car was removed to get the driver out and transport him to hospital. According to police, his condition was upgraded today to non-life-threatening injuries.
The police did tell us that he was talking in the ambulance, so I really hope the guy's doing okay.
Yeah.
Both Brown and Whitten were treated in hospital for smoke inhalation, with Whitten being treated for a cut to the finger sustained while breaking the car windows.
What it's meant to do, right?
Yeah.
It's serve and protect, service over self, put yourself in the way of harm for others.
And they say the decision to help is easy because they can identify with someone who's in distress.
I would want someone to come and help me.
Yep.
So I think that's what we did, and I think we did an okay job.
And one person is lucky that these two were ready when needed.
Now, in the aftermath of this crash, you can see over my right shoulder, one of the tires from the car remains, as long as two of the pillars are also been destroyed. Now, the two men who helped out said that they were feeling the effects of the smoke inhalation, but they will recover. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong. Natalie, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. To breaking news now out of East York, we are on the scene of a collision where a pedestrian has been struck. It happened about an hour and a half ago at Eldon Avenue and Weymouth Avenue. The woman is a victim in her 40s who has been taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The driver remained on the scene. Toronto police now investigating.
Turning to news that could have a major impact on the winter semester for Ontario college students. College faculty, represented by OPSU, have given 5-day notice of a potential strike. The union represents around 15,000 full-time and part-time professors and instructors, as well as counselors and librarians. They've been without a collective agreement since September. OPSU says the only offer on the table would leave members worse off than their expired contract. They say they're bargaining for increased job security. The College Employer Council says the demands also include 5 weeks of so-called self-directed time in addition to vacation time, and the union's demands are too pricey to be met.
They want 5 weeks self-directed time, and they want to reduce their teaching hours to on average, fewer than 9 hours a week. And when you add up all the reductions and the increase, the less work and the increase in pay that they want, it's $1 billion. And it's just, there is no way the college system can afford it. And as I said, we're happy to go to a binding arbitration and make sure the students stay in class.
After the notice period, a strike could start as soon as Thursday, but OPSU has said members should continue to report to work unless otherwise instructed.
Well, if you've been in areas being hit by snow squalls today, the plows and salters couldn't get on the road soon enough. This was a parade of plows on northbound Highway 400, north of Highway 89 today. The squalls have kept road crews busy north of Toronto in northern York region, Barrie and beyond. Between 20 and 40 centimeters were expected in some areas.
Here in the city, though, the bigger concern is the cold, with temperatures having dropped well below the freezing mark.
It has triggered the city's warming centers. Shelter doors open this evening to support the unhoused. CTV Siobhan Morris is live outside of Metro Hall with more. Siobhan.
Well, we have felt the temperature drop steadily over the last hour or so as darkness has really taken hold. It's not the kind of night you want to spend a lot of time outdoors. That's why the city has opened up these warming centers, including the one at Metro Hall, as you've mentioned, to give people who live on the street more options. With the cold deepening, the city's opening up more spaces for people to get in off the street and someplace warm. 5 warming centers are now open, including Metro Hall, which can accommodate about 30 people. There's also space at centers on Spadina Road near DuPont, Elizabeth Street, Holmes Avenue, and Scarborough Golf Club Road. All told, more than 240 spaces will be made available. These warming centers open their doors when temperatures drop below -5 degrees. That's a mark we are expected to reach tonight, the wind chill into the negative double digits. The cold snap is expected to last through next week. The city says they have more spaces available indoors to help people than ever before, and they've already seen the benefits of that in the month of December, seeing a reduction in the number of homeless encampments by the dozens. Reporting live outside Metro Hall, I'm Siobhan Morris. Natalie, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan. And as the temperature continues to drop this Friday night, let's take a live look outside at the city right now, looking at minus double digits with the wind chill tonight. Let's bring in Jessica Smith with all of the details. Jess.
It is another cold and very windy evening, but even though we are seeing temperatures drop, we're still sitting above seasonal with that actual base temperature before you factor in the wind chill. That gusty wind is still impacting portions of southern Ontario along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, so Owen Sound, Hanover down to London through Barrie. It is still really significant when it comes to the snow there, so just take care if you're traveling anywhere this weekend. Now, temperature-wise, we're sitting at -4. It feels like -12. Those double-digit wind chills are not going anywhere. Coming up, your full forecast right now. Back over to Michelle and Natalie.
Thank you, Jess. There is a new concerted effort to address concerns surrounding cases of youth in the Black community going missing across the GTA.
A special virtual meeting was held last night to address social media posts causing concern. CTV's Beth McDonnell has been working on this story and joins us now live with the details. Beth.
Natalie, over the past several months, there's been a growing concern about a plethora of social media posts dealing with the topic of missing Black boys here in the GTA. It led community leaders to hold a special meeting.
And we do have a special program in relation to that.
This is a virtual meeting held with community members and officers from Peel Police, Toronto Police, and the OPP Thursday night, addressing a rash of social media posts about missing Black boys in the GTA.
All of a sudden, there's a plethora of missing boys, flyers being sent on social media, and no one is giving us any kind of account as to what is really happening. Why is it that we're seeing so many, notices about boys being missing?
The Zoom town hall came about after Britain's Black Empowerment Unit brought forward concerns. More than 500 people attended, the maximum number of guests possible on the platform, with hundreds more stuck in the waiting room.
The meeting last night was impactful in a sense that it gave the community a better understanding of what's involved with missing persons. And it also dispelled a lot of the concerns that they had.
From my perspective, it achieved some of its objectives.
David Mitchell is a community advocate based at Jane and Finch. He believes the problem is a combination between the number of missing Black boys and education around the procedures when someone is missing.
I think what's important is to put things in context and get information from whatever source, whatever credible source that you can, in terms of how do you talk to young people, how do you build the relationships where they can come to you when they're in some type of distress.
Mitchell says people often go missing when there is conflict at home or mental health and addictions. He says there is also an issue with adults encouraging young people to go up north and sell drugs.
You never want to hear from mothers and fathers worried about their child, and I hope there is more we can do to ensure a safe environment, that these Black boys are protected from what we're seeing now. I hope, by studying this, we'll be able to draw more attention to it and see if we can make sure that we combat this.
Mitchell says laws are needed around recruitment not related to sex crimes of young people, and better race-based data to know if there's a reason to sound the alarm or what's happening is not a trend. Toronto police say they can't speak to other jurisdictions, but there is no information to suggest there is a trend of black boys going missing in Toronto. Toronto police say they have a social media account that deals with dispelling myths and explaining practices. They say they're also taking several other steps to keep the community informed. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. Still ahead, Ontario's timeline to roll out the promised rebate checks, when taxpayers can expect to receive their $200 and $200 more per eligible child. Emergency crews were called to a fire at an East York high-rise this afternoon. This was the scene at the building on Don Mills and Gateway Boulevard. Residents gathered outside as firefighters and police responded. The exterior of a unit on one of the higher floors had visible fire damage. No injuries were reported, and roads in the area reopened by around 4 o'clock. And police in York Region are searching for several suspects wanted in an arson investigation in Markham. This surveillance video is from the night of Sunday, December 22nd, near Yonge and Royal Orchard Boulevard. It may be grainy, but police say it shows 4 suspects being dropped off by a dark SUV and entering a bank vestibule before leaving. A few minutes later, police say they were called to a fire that was extinguished but reignited again after a few hours. A TD Bank is located there, and police say the building sustained severe damage. Investigators are hoping anyone with information or dash camera footage related to this incident will get in touch.
Meanwhile, police say a man accused of killing 2 people in Halifax this week was wanted for a shooting here in Toronto back in 2019. Investigators say 39-year-old Matthew Costain died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound a few hours after killing a 40-year-old woman and her 73-year-old father in downtown Halifax on Tuesday. Toronto police had issued a warrant for Costain's arrest back in September 2019, alleging he was involved in a shooting the month before at District 45 nightclub near Keele and Finch. 4 people were injured in that incident, while Halifax police say this week's shooting was a case of intimate partner violence. Meanwhile, York Regional Police have released an image of a suspect wanted for attempted murder. Police say 33-year-old Andrew Joseph Peter of King Township should be considered armed and dangerous. Investigators say on New Year's Day, a 24-year-old man was found suffering from gunshot wounds at a motel near Yonge Street and Queensville Side Road in East Gwillimbury. Peter was identified as the suspect, but police have not been able to track him down. Anyone with information is asked to call police or Crime Stoppers.
A few months after Premier Doug Ford announced plans to send rebate checks to Ontarians, we now have a better idea of when the money will arrive. A spokesperson for the province says taxpayers should receive those $200 payments by the end of January or early February. Premier Doug Ford has said the rebate is intended to help residents cope with the high cost of living and the impacts of the federal carbon tax. Ontarians who were 18 or older at the end of 2023 and filed their income tax for that year are eligible. Families who qualified for the Canada Child Benefit in 2024 will also receive an additional $200 per child. The government pegs the cost of this initiative at $3 billion. The opposition has called the checks a gimmick.
Now that we are past the holiday season, provincial police are sharing the results of their Festive RIDE program. The initiative is run by the OPP as well as local police services with a goal of catching and stopping impaired drivers. The OPP say their Festive RIDE program saw more than 1,200 impaired charges laid against 743 drivers across the province between November 21st and January 1st.
The reason we do this is because impaired driving continues to be one of the leading causes of death and injury on our highways. 49 people so far last year died in alcohol or drug-related collisions. That may be down from the previous year, but it's still far too many.
Police say they'll keep up ride checks throughout the year as drivers continue to get behind the wheel after consuming drugs or alcohol.
Should alcohol come with a health risk warning that is similar to the labels on cigarettes? America's top doctor says it should, amid research showing alcohol contributes to certain types of cancers. CTV's Mike Lecoutel reports.
It's more than dry January for Jack Barkley. He hasn't had alcohol for 3 years. There are a number of reasons he stopped drinking, but as a healthcare professional, the link between alcohol and cancer was one of them.
A lot of people in my family have a history of diabetes, liver disease, various forms of that, and cancer. And I know that does play a role in, with alcohol, it increases those risks of certain comorbidities.
Those risks have been even more clearly laid out by a new U.S. Surgeon General advisory on alcohol consumption and the link to cancer. In a 22-page advisory, Dr. Vivek Murthy said, for certain cancers like breast, mouth, and throat cancers, evidence shows that this risk may start to increase around 1 or fewer drinks per day. Murthy is even calling for updated health warning labels on alcohol containers, but some doubt it will change habits.
Just like cigarettes, it's not going to stop everybody from smoking. It's not going to stop everybody from drinking. So.
Canadian researchers have conducted a real-world evaluation of warning labels on alcohol containers. They point out even some packaged foods will have that type of health information on them in 2026.
Yet alcohol containers are exempt from these warning label regulations, so there definitely is a strong opportunity to strengthen warning label regulations in the country.
The Canadian Cancer Society agrees and would like to see similar labeling like what started on cigarette packages.
Only 40% of Canadians are aware that there's a link between alcohol and cancer risk, so a report like this really puts the attention on an important topic.
Health Canada has yet to comment on the U.S. Surgeon General's new advisory. However, in 2023, the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction did publish guidance on alcohol and health. It said you're considered at low risk if you have 1 to 2 drinks per week. Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
U.S. President Joe Biden will travel to New Orleans on Monday to offer comfort following this week's deadly attack. 14 people were killed when a man drove his truck into a crowd in the early morning hours of New Year's Day. Officials say it was an act of terrorism. The FBI is confident he acted alone. Bourbon Street reopened for business yesterday afternoon after authorities finished processing the scene.
In South Korea, investigators left empty-handed today after showing up at the impeached president's home to arrest him. Supporters of Yoon Suk-yeol rallied outside his official residence as the country's anti-corruption agency withdrew its outnumbered officers following a 6-hour standoff. It said there were several scuffles as the Presidential Security Service blocked them from entering the home. Investigators are considering charges of rebellion after Yoon declared martial law on December 3rd and dispatched troops to surround the National Assembly. He was apparently frustrated his policies were blocked by an opposition-dominated parliament.
In Ottawa, the Prime Minister paid tribute today to the late U.S. President Jimmy Carter. Justin Trudeau visited the U.S. Embassy to sign a book of condolence. He wrote, quote, "As a leader, president, and humanitarian, Jimmy Carter left the world a better place. I will always be grateful for his advice and will continue to draw inspiration from his extraordinary life." America's 39th president passed away on December 29th, surrounded by his family. His funeral will be held next Thursday in Washington.
Trudeau also took part in a virtual meeting of the Canada-U.S. Relations Cabinet Committee today. It was reinstated after Donald Trump was elected. He is threatening 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and has been taunting the PM on social media. Trudeau is not an official member of the committee, but officials say his attendance underscores the importance of its work. Today, Green Party leader Elizabeth May offered her thoughts on how Canada should deal with the Trump administration.
We listen to President-elect Trump's concerns. We dispute the nonsense that our border is allowing fentanyl and criminals to pour into the United States. We present the evidence to him that that's not the case. We don't need to kowtow. We need to point out to him that trade is not a zero-sum game. The fact that they buy more stuff from us than we buy from them doesn't mean that they're losers.
May thinks many Canadians want to hear our leaders be more explicit in dismissing the narrative of Canada joining the United States. Trump joked about that during a meeting with Trudeau in Florida last month and has made other comments about it since then. Meanwhile, Trump's bid to dismiss his hush money conviction due to his election victory has been denied. The U.S. president-elect will be sentenced on January 10th. The judge says he will not impose any time behind bars.
In Washington, lawmakers have returned to Capitol Hill for a new session of Congress. And today, Trump's choice for the Speaker of the House of Representatives narrowly won re-election.
As heirs to the American Revolution and the descendants of patriots who defied tyranny, in the coming months, we are going to pass legislation to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government known as the administrative state.
Mike Johnson was able to flip 2 remaining GOP holdouts who switched to support him. The final tally was 218 to 215. Johnson's weak grip on the gavel threatened not only his own job, but Trump's agenda of tax cuts and mass deportations. Johnson will have a very slim majority to work with in the chamber, 219 Republicans to 215 Democrats.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, some businesses are starting off the new year going out of business. A popular furniture store with locations in Toronto and Montreal has closed its doors, and some customers are still trying to get their furniture. I'll have that story. That's just ahead.
And although it was cold, it was still a fairly seasonal day. But as we head in towards next week, we are going to see the cold Arctic air that has already taken over northern Ontario make its way down to us. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast as we welcome in the first full week of January. All those details after the break.
Business bankruptcies in Canada have risen to their highest level in 15 years. In Ontario, they are up 67% over the same period last year.
Higher interest rates, inflation, and a weaker economy mean it could be a tough year for some companies if consumers stop spending. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle and Natalie. We've been hearing from customers who bought items from a popular furniture store. The company has locations in Toronto and Montreal. And even though they were taking orders over the past few months, it appears now they're no longer in business.
Something has gone horribly wrong in, I don't know, the year since we purchased from them.
Derek Gravener of Toronto bought a couch and other items from Wazo Furniture in the past. In November, he placed another order that he hoped to receive before Christmas for a family gathering.
A beautiful live edge table, 2 chairs that were going to match the bar stools we already had, and a bench totaling around $1,100.
Gravener says he grew concerned when his emails and phone calls were no longer being answered.
Didn't pick up on the sales line or the customer service line. So that was pretty weird.
The company's website is still in operation, but emails from CTV News were not returned. Phone numbers in Toronto and Montreal were no longer in service. When we visited the North York location, it appeared almost empty. According to Google, it's now permanently closed.
There are crews inside the building. They say it's now being renovated and that Wazo Furniture hasn't been at this location in about a month.
I think we're going to see a difficult 2025.
Doug Hoyes, a licensed insolvency trustee, says bankruptcies increased in 2024 and will continue to rise this year. He says many businesses that cease operations don't always declare going bankrupt, so the number of companies shutting down could be much higher.
It could be that the number of businesses that are closing is 10 times as high as what you're seeing in the official bankruptcy statistics.
Hoyes believes we've entered a recessionary period and more businesses will have a tough year ahead.
If I'm spending more of my income on food, shelter, and transportation, I've got less discretionary income to spend on things like furniture. So in a recession, that's the kind of business that gets hurt.
Gravener says he'd like a refund.
I think, like myself and so many others, just want our hard-earned money back.
And another viewer said he purchased a $5,000 couch in September and never got it. If you buy something from a company with a credit card and it goes out of business, you may be able to do a chargeback and get a refund for goods not received. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, it is the first Friday of this new year, and I think you could call it frigid.
It is cold. We saw Beth out there, Siobhan, Sean, all in the field, very bundled up. It's all about the layers tonight.
It really is, and we are settling into what is going to be a very cold stretch of days. This polar vortex, a very fancy way of saying a large area of really cold air, is already in northern Ontario. It's going to push down towards us. So although it is cold today and it'll be cold throughout the weekend, we're still holding on at a fairly seasonal point. But we get into Monday and it gets cold and it stays cold. The trade-off is we get a little sunshine, and we had some of that early on this morning, and it was nice to start our Friday, right? A little blue sky for a short time this morning. The cloud cover cover pushed in, and so did that wind. We're still looking at a few lake effect flurries out there, but overall it hasn't been all that bad, considering the time of year that it is. Right now we're sitting at -4 here in the city. It feels like -12. And yes, that is chilly, but we are pretty close to a seasonal point. And tonight we're actually above seasonal before you factor in the wind chill. But areas out towards Ottawa, they're at -10, feeling like -20. Anywhere north of North Bay, they are into that cold, frigid air that we will experience as we head in towards next week. Tonight dropping down to -6, feeling like -13. Again, the seasonal norm. We're still kind of just above that point, but we're seeing those double-digit wind chill values everywhere, and we're into the -20s. So we're really at Parry Sound, Peterborough, and Bancroft. As we make our way into the day tomorrow, we kick off our weekend at a very seasonal point, -2, feeling like -10. But we have a really gusty northwesterly wind to start the day, very gusty westerly wind to end the day, and that's still prompting a number of snow squall watches and warnings across a good portion of southern Ontario, especially along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. That trough, that blue dotted line, continues to push its way across, drawing all of that cold air over the relatively warmer waters, and we have just that lake effect snow machine creating snow squalls on and off as we round out our day today and heading into the weekend for those communities. As we head into the early part of our night, the bulk of the GTA, although it is cool and it is windy, we're staying relatively clear of any active weather. The bulk of it, again, in those areas. If you're traveling this weekend, I know a lot of folks may be getting the very last of their winter vacation. Just take care as you head out on the roads. As we head into our Saturday, again, a few light flurries expected in the GTA, but the bulk of that snow in those areas, so take care. We are looking at really beautiful conditions if you're inside or maybe you're somewhere skiing, but it's driving to and from that can really be the challenge. We head into our Sunday, a little bit more flurry activity, and then it starts to taper off as we head into the afternoon and early evening for almost everybody. So we finally get a little bit of a break from these snow squall effects. But as we head in towards next week, it gets really cold. Seasonally, again, -2 is around where we should be, -9, -10 for the low. But we're going to see that kind of dip down as we head throughout the majority of the week ahead. So your weekend, although it is a little snowy to get things started, we're relatively seasonal, all things considered. Just a little windy as we head into our Saturday. Looking ahead to next week, we settle into back to work for a lot of folks, back to school, back to the regular swing of things. And we are holding on to lots of sunshine as that cloud cover lifts. It means a nice, brilliant blue sky, but we do lose any of that kind of seasonal warmth that we have, and it is going to get quite chilly in addition to that cold Arctic air taking over us as the jet stream takes a really big dip. As we head in towards your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those overnight lows staying below seasonal, those daytime highs below seasonal, and that's before you factor in any kind of a wind chill. So we are verging on the time of year and the type of weather where that wind chill is extreme and can be quite dangerous. So layer up accordingly if you plan on spending time outside or you work outside. We do warm up kind of as we head in towards your Thursday and Friday, at least with those daytime highs and overnight lows, but we are settling into a very cold mark to the month of January. Natalie, I'll send things back to you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
Also tonight, once struggling to walk, now a bike riding thrill seeker. We catch up with an 8-year-old with cerebral palsy who underwent a life-changing medical procedure and can now do things you never thought possible.
A young boy with cerebral palsy is able to walk thanks to a surgery at the Montreal Children's Hospital.
Now, a year later, he's riding a BMX bike just like his brothers. CTV's Laurence Bresson-Dubroy reports.
Zachary Lessard is a thrill seeker, and BMX riding is his biggest adrenaline rush.
Maintenant, je vais vraiment vite, puis j'ai encore plein d'énergie.
He loves the speed, he says, but his dreams of taking up the same sport alongside his two brothers wasn't always in the cards. The 8-year-old was born with cerebral palsy. His mother, Virginie Bloin, says Zachary was just a few months old when he started showing difficulties with his motor skills.
We cannot tell what will be his limitation. We cannot tell if he will be able to walk. We cannot tell anything.
Cerebral palsy is a condition that affects movement and coordination, but it doesn't affect everyone in the same way. It can cause stiff muscles for some and jerky or floppy movements in others. For Zachary, even walking was difficult.
When he was walking, his knees was like inside and his feet was broken.
But last year, a life-changing opportunity came their way. On January 25th, Zachary underwent a major medical procedure, a grueling 10-hour surgery aimed at reducing exaggerated reflexes, explains neurosurgeon Dr. Jean-Pierre Farmer.
So that there's a better equilibrium between what the brain tells the spinal cord and the muscles to do and what the reflexes are are doing for the child.
The operation was a success, and after 2 months of rehabilitation, Zachary was back on his feet.
This is particularly rewarding for us because it changes their lives.
Not only did Zachary's walking improve, he's also been able to do things he previously couldn't, like riding his BMX bike. And that has brought his family closer together.
We start to train every week to do some BMX and see where Zach can go in the future with his brother.
It's time for Zachary to join Liam and Felix on the track because the brothers love BMX and Zachary's got ambition. His dream is to compete on some of the world's hardest tracks in the United States. And as Zachary rises to the challenge, his parents will be getting in on the action too by hopping on a BMX this year. Laurence Brisson-Dubreuil, CTV News.
Infectious disease experts say a closely watched avian flu case in a BC teenager could provide insights into the treatment of future infections. We mentioned yesterday that the 13-year-old has been released from intensive care after falling ill in November. The patient was the first human case of the virus in Canada, and health officials have noted that the virus appeared to have mutated in her in ways that could make it more infectious. There is no evidence of human-to-human transmission in her case or a similar one in Louisiana. Experts say a trio of antivirals appear to have helped the teen through the illness and could inform the treatment of dozens of avian flu patients in the States.
New figures from the provincial RSV levels remained at an elevated level as 2024 came to an end, while COVID levels were moderate. Those readings are based on the percentage of tests for each virus that came back positive over the week of December 22nd to the 28th. 865 people were in hospital during that time for COVID, and 8 died. 239 people were admitted for treatment for RSV, while figures on deaths were not available. Health experts recommend getting vaccinated if eligible to protect from more severe outcomes from those respiratory infections.
Neil Young has reversed plans to drop out of a headlining spot in the Glastonbury Music Festival. The Canadian music legend had posted on his website that he was no longer going to perform at the world-famous music festival. He had cited concerns over corporate control of the event and suggested broadcasting partner BBC had made requests he couldn't agree to. Today, though, he reversed course, writing, "Due to an error in the information received, I had decided not to play the Glastonbury Festival, which I have always loved. Happily, the festival is now back on our itinerary, and we look forward to playing. Hope to see you there." And fellow musician Carlos Santana will not be taking the stage as planned in Las Vegas this month, where he was due to start a residency at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. Deadline reports the guitarist was out on a walk in Hawaii and took a hard fall, leading to a broken finger on his left hand. Based on doctors' advice, he's unable to play guitar for 6 weeks and is now expected to start performances February 2nd. A release date has been set for the next season of Letterkenny, the spin-off series Shoresy, along with some other big news. Crave released this trailer today alongside confirmation that Shoresy Season 4 will start streaming on Friday, January 24th, with 2 episodes releasing that day. The hockey-focused show is set to feature some summer fun this time around. But that's not all. Crave also announced that Shoresy will have a 5th season starting production this spring. Crave and CTV are both divisions of Bell Media.
Award season is heating up on both sides of the pond, with the BAFTAs narrowing down their nominees for this year.
Are you English?
No, I'm not English. Why?
The British Academy shared the results of its first round of voting across 25 categories, and Variety reports music thriller Emilia Perez racked up the most potential nominations across 15 categories. It was followed closely by Vatican mystery movie Conclave, which had 14 possible nods. The announcement comes ahead of the Golden Globe Awards on Sunday.
Coming up on CTV News, a heartbreaker for hockey fans. Team Canada knocked out of the World Juniors in a deja vu loss. We asked the analysts what happened. That's coming up.
That's what we're supposed to do. We're mandatory first responders, right? We have the training. Why wouldn't we help?
Updating our top stories now, 2 young men came to the aid of a driver whose car crashed near Bayview and Moore last night. They put out the fire and assisted the man inside until first responders arrived to extricate him. He is recovering from non-life-threatening injuries.
With temperatures dropping, the City of Toronto is making more shelters available for people to get off the street and out of the cold. 5 warming centres are now open, including Metro Hall, as well as on Spadina, Elizabeth Street, Holmes Avenue, and Scarborough Golf Club Road. More than 240 spaces will be made available.
Alcohol containers are exempt from these warning label regulations, so there definitely is a strong opportunity to strengthen warning label regulations in the country.
The U.S. Surgeon General is calling for labels on alcohol, warning that it is a leading cause of cancer. The Canadian Cancer Society says 40% of people in this country are not aware that there is a link between alcohol and cancer risk.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
Canadian stocks moved higher again today, and U.S. markets pulled out of a multi-day slump. Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Toronto's benchmark stock index closed above 25,000 today for the first time since mid-December. Heavyweights Shopify and Royal Bank of Canada helped lift the market. And shares in clothing seller Aritzia rose 7%, closing in on their record high, which was set in early 2022. U.S. stocks rallied after a 5-session losing streak. They were led by tech and chip shares. But U.S. steel dropped 7% after the White House blocked the company's sale to Japan's Nippon Steel. Shares in alcoholic beverage sellers fell after outgoing U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy described a direct link between alcohol and heightened cancer risk, and also called for cancer warning labels. In Paris, Remy Cointreau dropped 5%. Molson Coors was down 3% in New York. In Canada, the alcohol industry has argued that cancer warnings aren't needed. 47 countries in the World Health Organization have warning labels on alcohol, but only South Korea cites cancer. Ireland will require a cancer caution next year. And finally, Seattle is getting set for long coffee shop lines and a surge in traffic. And businesses are hoping for a surge in sales as tens of thousands of Amazon workers are forced back to the office 5 days a week. That's an increase from the 3-day mandate that was put in place in 2023, which sparked protests. The Seattle Times says the center of the city saw an average of 91,000 workers per weekday in November, according to the Downtown Seattle Association. But that was just 56% of the November 2019 average. On the markets, the Canadian dollar again traded near its lowest since 2020. It changed hands at 69.23 U.S. cents, down 0.14 of a cent. West Texas Intermediate oil was at $73.96 U.S. a barrel, up 83 cents. Our latest fix on Western Canadian Select oil, $60.15, up $1.92. And the TSX Composite ended at 25,073.54, up just over 175 points. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Today, Google sent the $100 million it agreed to pay Canadian news organizations as a result of the Online News Act. That's the law Ottawa implemented, arguing tech giants were benefiting from featuring Canadian journalism on their platforms without contributing to it. Google made the payment to the nonprofit Canadian Journalism Collective in exchange for being exempt from the act. Meta has blocked news on its platforms to avoid making payments.
You may want to check your kitchens and pantries for a pair of salt products now subject to a recall by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. 2 types of salt produced and sold by Loblaw Companies Limited are being recalled because they may contain pieces of plastic. The covered products are President's Choice Himalayan Pink Rock Salts, 390 grams, and President's Choice Mediterranean Sea Salts, 360 grams, with expiration dates up to January 17th, 2026. Anyone who has those products is advised to not use, sell, or serve them.
Air Canada and WestJet were among the least on-time North American airlines last year. That's according to rankings compiled by Cirium. The data company says the Canadian carriers, along with Denver-based budget airline Frontier, scored worst in on-time performance. Aeromexico was named the most on-time airline, with nearly 87% of its flights on time in 2024. Delta was the highest-scoring U.S. airline, despite that July computer outage that caused thousands of flight cancellations.
There are some service adjustments that TTC riders will need to keep in mind for the start of 2025. After sharing an earlier date, the transit agency now says 509 Harbourfront streetcar service between Union Station and Exhibition Loop won't resume until the middle of this month. That is when overhead upgrade work on Fleet Street is expected to wrap up. 511 Bathurst streetcar service isn't expected to resume to Exhibition Loop until mid-January as well, due to the same issue. The TTC says it will also shift schedules on surface routes Sunday, as it does every 6 weeks in response to ridership and other factors. And a reminder, 10 reduced speed zones remain in effect along parts of subway lines 1 and 2, adding several minutes to many commutes. The TTC says it is running trains more slowly in those areas as a safety measure, but that doesn't mean it is unsafe to travel there. Rather, it says the slow zones help reduce wear on the tracks while necessary maintenance and upgrades are completed.
To sports, the Toronto Raptors are back in action tonight, hoping to build off their first win in quite a while.
January 1st, 2025, turn the page. IQ from the logo. Good!
Toronto ended an 11-game losing skid on Wednesday with a win over Brooklyn. Tonight they host Orlando, who are 4th in the Eastern Conference. It looks like the Raptors still won't have their projected starting lineup intact. RJ Barrett's status has been downgraded to doubtful for the game.
There will be a lot of questions and reflection in the weeks ahead following another early exit for Canada at the World Junior Hockey Championship.
Sakura back to Yuric, and a shot that was blocked. Yuric feeds it back across, Yeko scores!
The Canadians were ousted from the tournament after last night's 4-3 loss to Czechia. The game was tied late in the third period when penalties cost Canada again. The Czechs scored on the power play with just 39 seconds left in regulation time.
It wasn't our favorite tonight, but can't do anything about it. We played hard, and I guess the refs didn't like what they saw.
I had hope the whole game, honestly. It sucks. I thought we deserved to win that, but sometimes the hockey gods just aren't on your side, so it sucks. It's the worst feeling in the world.
Canada also lost to Czechia in the quarterfinals last year. The Czechs will now take on the U.S. in semifinal play tomorrow night. Sweden and Finland renew their rivalry in a matinee matchup. Both games are on TSN. CTV and TSN are divisions of Bell Media.
Still ahead on CTV News, the zoo wants you. Animal lovers flock to a job fair for their chance at a career caring for creatures. That's after the break.
Tonight, Canada's troubling trend of domestic violence.
We're failing. We are failing women. We're failing families.
The recent tragedies and renewed calls for change to better support families. Later on CTV National News.
And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special shout out to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
The Toronto Zoo welcomes visitors all year round, but it opened its doors for a different reason today.
The beloved tourist attraction and animal conservation hub held its winter job fair. The zoo called on job seekers to swing by today, offering free admission and free parking passes to ensure those interested could come and check out the available opportunities. They included everything from career to seasonal to volunteer roles. The zoo CEO said there is a lot of variety in the jobs available. as there are a lot of different kinds of work that needs to be done.
We have elaborate facilities to make sure we can meet an animal's every need. So whether it's folks looking after heating and cooling equipment, whether it's plumbers, electricians, carpenters, painters, all of them making sure our facility looks and feels the part, and we're ready to host those 1.3 million guests so they can have an amazing day and make those memories that will last a lifetime.
And if you weren't able to attend in person today, you can still check out available opportunities on the Toronto Zoo's website.
Well, I would imagine today the animals with nice winter coats are comfortable, but otherwise, yeah, it's been cold.
It's fresh, right? We've had such a warm start to the winter season, so I feel like this is kind of a shock to the system for almost everybody. But the snow welcome, I'm sure, in some areas for the people who like winter activities, like skiing and skating and snowboarding. Maybe less, though, for those who are not a fan of the colder weather. Well, buckle up because it's going to get cold as we head into next week. So looking at those streamers off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, prompting some snow squall warnings in those areas. So take care if you're traveling that way this weekend. Right now here in the city, -4, feeling like -12. And although it is chilly this weekend, it is very seasonal. It's as we head into Monday and onwards that we get cold and we stay cold.
Those -11s look no fun. Okay, thank you, Jess. Appreciate it, but the weekend is here. That's it for us. You can join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Pauline Chan, who has your next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here at CTV News, thanks for watching and have a great night.